All right, welcome back. Time to get that data from our network into a table view. Now, since we're actually going to start designing the layout, this is a good time to make sure you're on the phone that you actually want to be on. Next week, we'll actually get into auto layout, where our views will look cool on a variety of different sizes. But for now, we're going to be stuck with whatever size we designed for here in the storyboard. You can change that easily by going down here and clicking View As. And I can say a 7 Plus, or a 7, or an SE. I can also switch the orientation if I want to design that way, or an iPad. I highly recommend running your app on your phone, so I would choose whatever phone size you have. I'm going to choose the iPhone 7. All right, next thing we're going to do, I'm going to open up this pane here and get a table view by searching that. There's a table view controller. That's just a view controller that has some boilerplate stuff for a table view. We're actually just going to add a table view itself to our view controller. And I'm going to stretch it here across the whole view controller. Next thing we'll do is drag out a table view cell. That's this prototype cell here. And I'm going to go ahead and continue building my layout. I'm going to add a UI image view for my poster. And a few labels. One for title, and I'm going to select this, hit Command D to duplicate it. And this will be my overview. It's a good idea sometimes when you're designing here to use real data so you kind of know what it looks like. Let's go back to our JSON data here, and I'll use this for the title. And let's use the Wonder Woman overview. Cool, now you see that's going off the screen. We don't want that. Let's drag this back in here. Now notice how it's not wrapping. I'm going to go to the Attributes Inspector, also known as the DJ slider, and we will set the number of lines to be 0, and then we get a wrap. I could also, if I only wanted it to be, say, 2, I could do that. But if I want it to be able to be as many as it needs and I have space for, I'll do 0. Let me just style this up a little bit here. Oh yeah, some bold. Get the font a little bigger and make this maybe thin. Cool. And now that I'm working with my cell here, I'm going to click this table view cell to select it. Make sure it's selected. And I want to make sure I set its identifier. Any kind of reusable elements, like the table view cell, where it's going to be reused across all these rows, the table view needs to be able to find it. So we'll give it an identifier. We'll just call this movie cell. Sweet. Now let's get this table view hooked up. Let's make a little room here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is make an outlet from my table view. I like making outlets a lot of times from the document outline here, because sometimes when you got a lot of stuff stacked on each other, it's hard to know what you're clicking on. Call this table view. Now the table view doesn't know what it should display, right? It doesn't know what the cells should contain. It doesn't know how many of them it should have. So it's going to ask whoever declares to be its data source what it should do about that. So we want to make those decisions, so we'll declare ourselves to be the data source. So in viewDidLoad, I'm going to go ahead and make some room here and say table view dot data source equals self. And self in this case is the now playing view controller. All right, we got an error here, but this will actually be helpful in us figuring it out. It says cannot assign value of type now playing view controller as the UI table view data source. So what the table view is saying is, wait a second, you're saying you're my data source, but you're not a UI table view data source. You're a now plane view controller. So all we have to say is, oh, table view, we're also a UI table view data source. And then we'll get another error that says, well, really, you say you're a UI table view data source, but I'm going to be doing things like I'm going to be calling methods on the data source to say, hey, how many cells do I need? Or what should be in my cells? And I don't see any methods here that are going to return that for me. I have specific methods that I'm going to call on whoever is my data source, and you don't have those. You are not conforming to the data source. Well, how do we know which methods those are? Well, one way to do it is command click on the UI table view data source, and we can see here a bunch of different methods that are included in this protocol. This is a protocol of how to work with the table view to give it data. Now, notice how a couple of these say optional. In fact, all of them say optional, except for these top two, which are number of rows in section, right? How many rows, how many cells do you want the table view to be? And then this other one, which is cell for row at index path, which returns a UI table view cell. That's actually, the table view is like, what cell do I actually put in there? And so we're going to return and give it a cell. So let's go ahead and implement this. I can actually just copy them from here, or if we go back, I'm going to hit Command Control and left arrow here. It kind of gets back. It's the same as these little arrows there. Let's have it just autocomplete now that we've said that we're the UI table view data course. So I'm going to say table view, and see these are data source methods. Number of rows in section. Remember, that was the one. And do you remember the other one? Yes, you do. It is table view cell for row at index path, right? So here, tell it how many cells, and here we say what the cell is going to be. Now, each of these have a return. This returns an int. So for now, let's just say some number like 10. And then here, let's actually go and get that cell. So I'm going to say let cell equals table view. I'm going to call this method this DQ reusable cell with identifier. Remember when we set the identifier on this cell in interface builder there, we called it movie cell. That's the identifier that it's going to go look for index path. And then we'll just say return cell. Before I run this, look, I'm designing for a 7, right? But my simulator is set up for a 7+. So let's make sure we have matching view controllers here. Sweet. Well, kind of. I mean, we have all our cells, and I mean, we haven't plugged it into any kind of real data. So I think this is actually a step in the right direction. The only thing I'm going to do here is I'll make the background color of my image view actually a color so I can just kind of tell when it's there. We've got our initial table view set up. In the next video, we'll be hooking up the data from our network request with our table view.